Welcome to SportsBanter. This is Bryce, and today we're talking about AEW Dynamite once again for the August 4th, 2021 edition of AEW Dynamite. Let's get right into it with the first match, and it was the third labor of Jericho, Chris Jericho versus Juventud Guerrera. And the stipulation was that Chris Jericho can only win from a high-flying maneuver. This match was pretty solid between these two. Nothing to write home about. These are two veterans in the ring fighting it out, so I wasn't expecting some high-paced, high-flying action all throughout the contest, but there were some good spots, especially from Juventud Guerrera. I think the highlight of the match was definitely Chris Jericho's Judas effect from the top rope, and I must say that looked really awesome watching at home. It was very well executed from Jericho, and Jericho obviously gets the win in this one, but the fourth labor is actually revealed right then and there as Wardlow comes out, attacks Juventud Guerrera, as well as attacking Chris Jericho, and MJF reveals that it's going to be Wardlow with MJF versus Chris Jericho next week on Dynamite. The fourth labor, of course, with the fifth leading to Chris Jericho versus MJF. Then we have an interview segment with Dasha Gonzalez interviewing what was supposed to be Death Triangle. It ended up only being the Lucha Brothers because apparently Andrade El Idolo interrupted Pac's flight plans, which probably means that Pac's just taking a break for a week. But this comes to show that Andrade is really trying to drive a wedge between Death Triangle, and Death Triangle is staying strong. So we'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks between the Death Triangle and Andrade El Idolo with Chavo Guerrero. I think this could lead to maybe a tag match between Andrade El Idolo and Chavo Guerrero versus the Lucha Brothers. We'll have to see where it leads and where AEW wants to take it. I'm going to skip the Dark Order Elite stuff until we get to the Hangman Adam Page promo coming later in this video. Next, we have sort of a little bit of a random trios match. It was thrown together the day before by AEW management, aka Tony Khan. It was 2.0 and Daniel Garcia versus Jon Moxley, Eddie Kingston, and Darby Allin. And this was a hell of a trios match. This was my first introduction to 2.0 and Daniel Garcia. And man, have these guys worked together as a team before? Because they looked like a very well-oiled machine. And this was a huge matchup, very entertaining. I was very impressed with 2.0 and Daniel Garcia. They just fit the All Elite Wrestling style. They fit the style of the match. It all flowed very nicely. It could be one of my matches of the night. There was another match later in the show that might take the cake for match of the night, but this is probably my second favorite match of the Dynamite episode, and that's saying a lot given that 2.0 and Daniel Garcia, this is their first match in AEW. So to come in as free agents, I hope they get signed. They were fantastic in this match against a seemingly all-star team of Darby Allin, Jon Moxley, and Eddie Kingston. So let's see where these three newcomers go in AEW. Maybe they should just stick as a trio. Maybe it could introduce the trios titles, something that's been rumored around AEW for a while. Personally, I'd like to see it. I think it'd be very exciting for the brand of All Elite Wrestling. And I think that 2.0 and Daniel Garcia could be a good team to go for those belts, as well as Death Triangle, best friends when Trent comes back. You know, Trent, Chuck Taylor, and Orange Cassidy would be a fantastic duo. You've got the Elite. You've got the Dark Order. There's so many directions you could take, especially with the amount of factions in AEW, that this could work. If they just give it a try, this concept, I believe, would work. Anyways, did I mention that Jon Moxley, Eddie Kingston, and Darby Allin won the match? It was a hell of a match, hell of a debut for 2.0 and Daniel Garcia. Next, we see a promo with Brian Cage, and yeah, it's gotten me pretty excited for this Brian Cage, Ricky Starks feud, where Brian Cage has defected from Team Taz and is now on his own. Hopefully it leads to Brian Cage versus Ricky Starks, possibly at All Out. Then we get Christian Cage going one-on-one with The Blade. And this was a pretty solid match. Wasn't my favorite match. I think I'd put it a little bit above the Chris Jericho Juventud Guerrera match. I think I'd put it a little higher than that. It was solid. The Blade continues to impress me as a solid in-ring worker. I feel that, especially when in his match against Orange Cassidy, I didn't think at the beginning that he was suited for this kind of special singles match role, but now he's got it. I mean, he had a very good match with Orange Cassidy. Now he's had a pretty dang good match with Christian Cage. And the Blade is really building himself up as a threat in AEW, especially for when the Butcher comes back. I think that the Butcher and the Blade as a tag team could run through the AEW World Tag Team Championship division. And the Blade's really helping himself here, kayfabe-wise and in reality. In the beginning of the match, legit Layla Hirsch came out to brawl with the Bunny because those two would have a match later in the show. So it really left a one-on-one match between the Blade and Christian Cage. And it was a pretty clean match up until that point. But of course, the Blade tried to go for those brass knucks, but was stopped by a spear from Christian Cage. And the 1, 2, 3 occurred. And Christian Cage, officially the #1 contender for the AEW World Championship. Maybe this will set up Kenny Omega versus Christian Cage at All Out. That would be a great main event. And I think that's where they're going, given what's going to happen later with Hangman Adam Page. Then we see a video package between FTR and Santana and Ortiz. By the way, that match was very disappointing, I'd say. It was pretty disappointing to see that it was cut short, and a lot of the attention went to Cash Wheeler's forearm that was cut open. And that was a brutal injury. Hope Cash Wheeler is doing all right. Dax Harwood had an amazing emotional promo in that pre-taped segment between Santana and Ortiz and FTR. And what's really been asserted is that this is not over. They're going to have another match. And I think that it's going to be a hell of a match. It's going to be a lot of blood for each team. FTR because Cash Wheeler was injured, and Santana and Ortiz are going to fight with a lot of blood because they lost the last match. They were embarrassed. So this is the right move by AEW. Props to them for that. Then we see Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, come out with an interview with Tony Schiavone. And it was a pretty solid promo. And Red Velvet comes out almost immediately, challenges Britt Baker to an AEW Women's Championship match. And we find out that the first Rampage, August 13th, it's going to be Britt Baker versus Red Velvet for the AEW Women's World Championship. I think this is going to be a great match. Definitely a great match to put on your first show of Rampage. And you just got to sit back and enjoy. Hopefully Britt Baker's AEW Women's Championship reign kicks it off hot right here, because the stuff until now hasn't been too hot with Nyla Rose. Good thing Nyla Rose has found something else to do, as she's a talented competitor in AEW. But her and Britt Baker, I didn't feel interested in that feud. This feud between Red Velvet and Britt Baker seems a little more interesting. Just a little more. We're getting a step up from what we had earlier. Then we have a segment in which Dasha Gonzalez interviews Andrade El Idolo. And El Idolo gets Fuego del Sol, beats him up, and sends a message to Death Triangle. If they're not willing to be submissive to Andrade El Idolo, bad things are going to happen. And here we go. Hangman Adam Page, earlier in the show, declared that he and the Dark Order are going to split because of Hangman's disappointing loss last week against the Elite. And the Elite promptly came out after making too many WWE references in the segment before. They come out and they basically beat the hell out of Hangman Adam Page. The Dark Order trying to stop the Elite from decimating Hangman, and yet Evil Uno and Stu Grayson are the voices of reason here, willing to give Hangman Adam Page the space. It was a masterful segment. It's just another example of how AEW is doing this Hangman versus the Elite storyline, this long-term story that's been building over years. How they're doing it justice, and they're helping it continue and grow and be more interesting, as I'm really excited for what happens between Hangman Adam Page and the Dark Order next week. In the meantime, Stu Grayson and Evil Uno are going to have their hands full with the Impact Tag Team Champions Doc Gallows and the Machine Gun Carl Anderson. Then we have probably my favorite match of the night, Miro versus Big Shotty Lee Johnson for the TNT Championship. And I thought this was going to be a squash, but Big Shotty had a big night. He fought back against Miro. I think it was like a 15-minute match. I thought it was going to be a 5-minute squash from Miro, but Big Shotty Lee Johnson really showed out. He really impressed me for the limited amount of reps he's gotten on Dynamite. He really took a big shot tonight. Just the tenacity and the big fight feel from Big Shotty Lee Johnson made this match feel competitive, as well as Miro. He showed a lot of weakness in this match, but Miro brought the intensity back and won the match. So it was an excellent performance from both of these competitors. Miro made Big Shotty Lee Johnson look very strong in that ring, while Miro didn't lose his steam as God's favorite champion. Before we get to the Bunny versus legit Layla Hirsch, we had an interview, Tony Schiavone interviewing Christian Cage. And Christian Cage said that he's going to be at Dynamite and Rampage next week in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and that he's elite. So what the commentary team was kind of alluding to is that Christian Cage might show up at Rampage with something with Kenny Omega. So we'll have to see what happens on Rampage, but one thing's for sure, Rampage is going to be a very exciting show in its debut, Friday, August 13th, 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central. It's going to be a great show. 4 commentators, Excalibur, Taz, Mark Henry, and Chris Jericho. So it's going to be a hell of a show, and we better tune in, because even the second show, it's in Chicago, where Darby Allin wants to face the best in the world. Anyways, now here we are to the Bunny versus legit Layla Hirsch. This match really shocked me by how invested I was going to become in this match. At the beginning, I really wasn't feeling it. It was not pulling on anything, didn't really care. But once the commercial break hit and it came back, I felt very invested in this match. We had a little bit of a scuffle, a little bit of a confrontation on the outside between Chris Statlander and Nyla Rose. So that was happening. And in the ring, we had a great battle between Layla Hirsch just wrenching at the Bunny's arm, and Allie did a really good job at selling the arm in this match. Really props to her, props to both competitors, as they made this match very compelling, very believable, and in the end, legit Layla Hirsch made Allie tap out, and now legit Layla Hirsch is challenging Camille for the NWA Women's Championship on NWA programming. So AEW extending its wings. This is not new, the partnership with the NWA, but with Thunder Rosa and Serena Deeb not the NWA Women's Champion, I think this is a breath of fresh air for AEW's relationship with the NWA. So good stuff for AEW for extending itself outside of the Impact New Japan kind of deal going on and going to the NWA. Also, Camille got on AEW television, which is pretty cool. Nick Aldis still hasn't shown up in AEW. So we'll have to see where, if there's more NWA involvement with AEW. But given by the past, this might be the extent that NWA becomes involved with All Elite Wrestling. Oh, big news. Jade Cargill is going to be wrestling next week on AEW Dark Elevation, Monday night. She's going to be wrestling for the first time in a bit, so tune in for that, because I'm definitely going to tune in for Elevation. All right, this is the moment we've all been waiting for. Malachi Black going one-on-one with Cody Rhodes. It was a squash. Malachi Black decimated Cody Rhodes. It was fantastic. I loved every second of the match. The crowd was into it. The crowd was losing their mind at the fact that Cody and Malachi Black were face-to-face in that ring. And the intensity was never lost on this match. Malachi Black knocking Cody into the ringside table really did a lot to Cody. And then the big kick. It was the fade to black in WWE. I don't know what they actually call it in AEW. But that kick knocking out Cody Rhodes. And Malachi Black pinning Cody Rhodes with not a single care in the world. 1 foot on the throat, and that was it for Cody Rhodes. What a squash. And Cody, even after the match, tried to retire, but Malachi Black beat the hell out of Cody Rhodes to end the show. The promo, I think, was a little long-winded for not retiring. I get what they were trying to go for, We thought Cody Rhodes would be retiring tonight, which really shocked me because I wasn't ready to see Cody retire from in-ring action. Cody Rhodes has been, love him or hate him, I've enjoyed his work in AEW, and I didn't think that it was his time to quit or his time to leave the boots in the center of the ring. But it seems that with Malachi Black beating up Cody Rhodes, Rhodes is going to be gone for a little bit, taking care of his new family. However, I think that Cody Rhodes is going to come back. And maybe we're going to see some shades of Cody Rhodes going against Brody Lee in the dog collar match. Cody Rhodes, a new whole attitude. I think that might be in store to continue this rivalry with Malachi Black. Well, guys, that's the end of Dynamite. Let's go over next week's card. Next week on Dynamite, Dan Lambert is apparently coming back with some backup after being attacked by Lance Archer like 3 or 4 weeks ago on AEW Dynamite. Christian Cage teases that he's going to be involved with the Elite. Will it be on Dynamite? Will it be on Rampage? Chris Jericho once again going against Wardlow in the 4th Labor of Jericho, where MJF is ringside. Nyla Rose with Vicky Guerrero goes one-on-one with Chris Statlander after their confrontation in the women's match this past week on Dynamite. And the Good Brothers are facing Evil Uno and Stu Grayson for the Impact Tag Team Championships. It's going to be a pretty good card. Don't forget, next Friday on Rampage, Britt Baker defends her AEW Women's World Championship against Red Velvet. Guys, that is the end of this video. Like, comment, and subscribe. Stay for more. And until next week, I'll see you in the next one.